I was recently listening to a video by a pastor who was talking about adoption, and he shared a real life story about his dad that I thought was incredible. So his parents had biological kids like him, and then they also adopted. And one day they were at a restaurant with a lawyer because they were in the process of writing their newly adopted kids into their will in order to accompany their biological kids. And the lawyer said to his dad, just so you know, once your adopted kids are written into your will, it is illegal to ever take them out. It was literally impossible for them to remove their adopted kids from their will once they were put in. And if this doesn't highlight grace and security, I don't know what does. And as we continue to look at 1 Corinthians 15, we're going to see that what enables us to stand firm in our faith has to do with the power of God's grace and security in our lives. So let's read 1 Corinthians 15, verses 9 and 10. Paul says, "For I am the least of the apostles and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me." So just prior to this, Paul has recounted some of the people that Jesus appeared to after his resurrection. And he concludes by saying, then finally, last of all, he appeared to me as one who was abnormally born. In other words, Paul is saying, I was a little late to the party. There were Jesus' disciples and others who were following Jesus before Paul. Nevertheless, Jesus did show up to Paul, even if it was late in the game. Paul goes on to say that he doesn't even deserve to be called an apostle. And this is likely because of what he says elsewhere. He says, I am the chief of sinners because I persecuted the church, yet I was shown mercy because I did it in ignorance and unbelief. Now, if we lack the firm footing that the gospel gives, right, the good news that we're made right with God through no merit of our own, but only through what Christ has done for us, then we are going to constantly fall prey to comparing ourselves to others, to falling into self-pity, or feeling superior. Right? If I am taking my stand in life apart from God's grace, then what that means is I have to prove myself to everyone that I am worthy and that I belong. Now, this can be a pretty tiresome task because once that becomes the means by which I belong, it never stops. Now, I love what Paul says. He says, by the grace of God was not without effect in my life. Right? He says that I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God that was within me. We see that grace and hard work are not opposed to one another. It's just important to get the order right. We receive God's grace. We are made right. Then we joyfully labor within that grace to serve others, right? Not to prove we are worthy, but because God's grace has already made us worthy. So let me leave you with these two questions. Where do you feel in life that you have to prove yourself? And then second, do you feel that you have a firm sense of God's grace in that area?